explanations for quiz 2 questions. Before we do that, we have one important video we need to learn. So that's the more jQuery features. So there are some interesting and very useful features. So after this video, so then we can use jQuery to do, a lot of JavaScript programming. All right. First, let us look at this feature: set multiple CSS properties with one method call. If you use the way we used in the previous video, C.3, if you want to set multiple CSS properties, you can do one by one, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. You can do one by one. But here in this example, so if you just want to use one CSS method call to do multiple CSS properties modification, change, then you can do that. All right, so it's pretty simple and also pretty straightforward. You just use inside the parentheses. You need to pass the parameters, right? You're supposed to pass the property name and the property value. In order to pass multiple properties, here you use this special way, a pair of curly braces. A pair of curly braces. All right. Inside it, you can list multiple properties as key value pairs, but separated by comma. So that's simple. Actually, that's the basic array format. Not array. Later we will see, the object format. Object. Later we'll talk about object format. But regarding the object format, here the property key value pairs slightly different. For example, the property name, you use double quotes. String value double quotes. All right, colon, property value, double quotes, comma, this kind of detail, double quotes are not, this kind of detail, it is important. So you need to pay attention to, things like this little thing. All right, look at example. Here we set two properties in this way. All right. Next, in order to learn some other jQuery useful features, first we need to learn a basic concept: JavaScript objects. JavaScript objects, here we talk about data part, because sometimes we need to work on a little more complex data. So far, the data we worked on are integer, string values, relatively simple data format. But in the real world, many times we need to work on much more complicated data. So how complicated it is? We will see that. So the data has some relationship between different items, or the data has some internal structure. So we need to preserve, we need to represent the structure in the data. Yeah. For that purpose, we need to use this JavaScript objects. So let's look at the format of JavaScript objects. Objects are variables that can contain many values, but we need to organize those values in a nice way, simple, easy to use, but we can arrange things in a well-organized way. Yeah. So that's what we want to do here. Yeah. All right, let's look at this example. Here we define one variable in this way. All right. The right-hand side, you can see the data pieces or items are arranged, included inside a pair of curly braces. Yeah. So this is the object type, the object format. So you can see that is the what we want to learn, the object format. All right. Yeah. So you can see what is the format. Here you can see property by property. All right, property by property. Yeah. So how to represent one property? First, property name, colon, property value. Yeah. But here you can see the property name. When we write property name, we just write a name directly. We don't use double quotes. So that's the reason it's different from what we did in that CSS method. So that's why that double quotes around the property name, that's important. Yeah, this kind of detail. Yeah. Here you can see this JavaScript object is different from we used in that CSS method, jQuery CSS method. All right, but you can see this way is pretty simple, right? Yeah. Next, object definition. Yeah. How do we define an object? Yeah. You define and create. Yeah. So when you define, at the same time, that's also the creation statement. Yeah. A JavaScript object with an object literal. Yeah. All right. So here, another example, object literal in this way. Yeah. So you can see this way similar to this example, right? Yeah. But you can organize in multiple lines. Yeah. All right. Spaces and line breaks are not important. An object definition can span multiple lines. All right. Yeah. So that's simple. So you can see, yeah, JavaScript objects pretty easy to understand, right? So when you see it, you know how many properties are inside this object. For each property, what is the name? What is the value? Yeah, pretty straightforward. Yeah. All right. So next, yeah, object properties. Yeah. The name colon values pairs in JavaScript objects are called prop. Yeah. So we refer to properties. Yeah. Next, this time we need to access properties. Accessing object properties. There are two ways. Yeah. The first way, using the dot operator. So that's the one most people are familiar with, dot operator. But there is another way that many people may not be familiar with, using square brackets around the, what's that? The property name, right? Yeah, the property name, double quotes, property name. Yeah. So this second way is less popular than the first way. But the second way is the newer version, and actually it can cover more cases than the first way. The first way, relatively more strict. Yeah, relatively more strict. Yeah, so a lot of conditions. You need to try to avoid certain type of property name, right? But the second, better. Yeah. Second, although less popular than the first one, but the second, in the long run, should be better than the first version. Yeah. All right, so for the example, we can use these two versions. Yeah. Last name, first name. Yeah. But here I want to point out one simple difference. Yeah. When you compare these two, think about. Here I want to point out the advantage of the second version. Why I said the second version is, in the long run, better than the first version. Because look at the first version. When you use dot operator, you cannot no space allowed, right? No space allowed in the property name, right? Yeah, think about that. If you put a space, violation, syntax violation, right? No space allowed. But this way, because you use double quotes, you can see space character is allowed. How about that? Because you want to specify property name. Is it possible that the property name can contain a space character? That's reasonable, right? Yeah, sometimes when we create a name, the name could contain some special characters, right? Like space character. Now, this simple example gives you the advantage of the second version, the bracket version, bracket operator version. All right, yeah, here I just mentioned it. All right, so then let's look at the object methods, another special case that we can do inside a JavaScript object. Yeah. So what's that? Objects can also have methods. Object can have methods. Yeah. So that's different from what we think before, right? Yes, but because we feel all the properties inside an object must be key value pairs, right? Yeah, standard key value pairs. But here there is a special situation. Yeah. Methods are actions, all right, functions, actions that can be performed on object. Yeah, methods. Yeah, yeah. We know that concept first. Yeah. Second, methods are stored in properties as function definitions. All right, so here we can store a method as a property way in the property format. All right, yeah, we treat it as a regular property, but actually we have a method. Okay, yeah, why we can do that? So in order to understand this special way, if you have some JavaScript function background, yeah, I gave you one video explaining the basics of JavaScript functions. If you have that background, you can understand this way much easier. Yeah. Here, I just give you a simple example. Yeah. Example, we define person, this variable, equals an object. So in this object, yeah, first property simple, we can understand easily. Second, simple, we can understand easily, right? Third, easy, pretty easy, right? But the fourth one, now this is the new way we need to understand with basics of JavaScript functions. Yeah, here you can see the property name, full name. Yeah, so here the property name is called the full name. Yeah. So we want to generate the full name property. Yeah. How to generate? We use an anonymous function expression as the value of this property. Yeah. The full name property, its value is an anonymous function expression. Okay, yeah. No name, this function has no name, anonymous, right? Yeah. So there we see how it is defined. Yeah. All right. So this dot first name, this object, okay, this dot first name plus space character plus concatenation, yeah, this dot last name. How about that? How about that? So this is a function definition. All right. So with that, so now how do we use it? Yeah. So let's look at an example to call this function. Yeah. Just our usual way we call it. Yeah. Let's look at this way to call it. Name equals person, the object variable name person dot. Now when we call the function, we use the property name, full name. Yeah. But this full name, because it corresponds to a function, so we use the function representation, parenthesis. Parenthesis. So we call this function. All right. Yeah. So here you can see JavaScript objects, pretty flexible. Yeah. Pretty flexible. Yeah. It has regular property ways, all right? But other than that, it can also contain methods. Methods. Yeah. Yeah. All right. Let's move to next, the jQuery, DOM manipulation. Yeah. Here, this DOM model, although we will discuss a little more DOM model, but here you just understand we will use jQuery to modify parts of the elements. Yeah. DOM, so DOM represent the whole tree structure of all the elements in your document. Yeah. Document object model, the whole tree structure. So it's organized as a tree structure for all the elements in your documents. All right. Yeah. But here we want to use jQuery's special methods to modify part of the elements. Yeah. So there are several very useful, powerful methods in jQuery we can use. All right. So let's look at one by one. Yeah. 3 basic jQuery methods for DOM manipulation. First one, text method. From the name, you can see we want to get a text, right? Yeah, actually we can do both sets and the returns. Yeah, sets, you change the value. Yeah, return just the get, returns the text content here. Text content of selected elements. What is the text content of the selected elements? Only the text part. You get the text part. The non-text part, you do not get it. You do not want to take non-text part. So what's the non-text part? Other elements we do not treat as text part. We just want to get a plain text. The plain text we treat as text. Yeah. Other non-text part, because you have the content of an element contains some other elements, right? Other elements, you know. Yeah. So we treat different from the plain text. Yeah. Things like that. Yeah. All right. HTML method. So this one, we get what? Remember, in the standard JavaScript, we have a property called inner HTML, right? Inner HTML property, we can access inner HTML property, right? It refers to the content of an element. Yeah. This HTML method corresponds to that inner HTML property. Yeah. All right, here, sets and returns the content of selected element, including HTML markup. Markup, what's the HTML markup? Tags, right? Yeah. How do you do markup? You use tags, right? Yeah. Here you can see the previous one, text content. No tags, right? Not including tags. So you can see these two methods, the main difference. Yeah. Text method, you only want to get the plain text part. Without, you ignore all the tags, elements using tags to do the markup, HTML markup part. But this one, you want to get everything. Yeah. Corresponding to inner HTML, everything as the content, yeah, containing the HTML markup. Yeah. That's the difference of these two methods. All right. The third one, also important, the value. You want to access the value of an element. Now, some of the elements, we use value to, represent the values those elements can take. Yeah. So what are those elements? Form fields, input fields. Think about input fields. The user enter some input data in the input fields. Yeah. All right. Text area, enter data into a block of area, text area. Yeah. So you can retrieve the value, right? Yeah. And many other cases, drop-down list, you can retrieve the selected value, right? Radio button, checkbox, all those elements, they have some values to be returned. Yeah. So if you want to retrieve the values from those elements, this method is useful. Yeah. Here, how to use this method to retrieve value and set new value? Look at the simple example here. Retrieve value. Yeah. Here, selector. Yeah. Selector. Hash. Yeah. So we select ID. Yeah. Hash test. Yeah. Dot. Then we call. So this element with ID test, we want to read its value, VAL, this method. How about that? Okay, all right. Another one, hash test selector, ID, yeah. This time we want to write new value for that element. Okay, so we pass double quotes new value as the argument of this method. Yeah. Val method. Yeah. All right. Yeah. So you can see pretty straightforward. Yeah. All right. So the last feature I want to talk about here, yeah. Access attributes. Attributes access. Yeah. That's another important type of information we want to access and modify. Yeah, that's the attributes. Yeah. All right. So the jQuery has this special method, attr parenthesis attribute. Any attribute you can access. Yeah. Yeah. All right. So let's look at how do we use this method. All right. This example, variable var link variable. So now you select the hash w3s, yeah, so the ID w3s dot attr method call, yeah, what is the attribute name? href attribute, double quotes, href attribute. Yeah. Then, so this method returns the value of the href attribute. Yeah. So you should get a URL string. Yeah. All right. Yeah. Similarly, attr, this method, yeah, this method is also used to set change attribute values. Yeah. You pass the new value into this method, so you can change it. Yeah. For example, button. Yeah. Here you select the button. All right. Yeah. Button. Yeah. Button tag. Click the button, then you call this function. No. Yeah. Call this anonymous function. Right. Anonymous function. Yeah. Then the first parameter or argument, the first argument of attr attribute name. The second argument, that's the value for this attribute. Yeah. So in this way, you can change the value of any attribute in a simple way. Right? So here you can see if you use jQuery, you can do so many things in a simple way, very simple way. Yeah. All right. So here, because due to the time limitation, I do not have time to give you many jQuery examples. But later, I try to find, some more video time to show you several simple but interesting jQuery examples. All right, so let me stop the D.1 right here. Yeah.